Bertrand and Tohar are finally out in Call of Dragons, and there is a lot of controversy asking if they're really a good March, while Lilia and Villain are actually quite a bit better and winning the 1v1s. Now, there is a lot of information out there, and a lot of it is not 100% accurate because of the state of the game currently. So I'm gonna go in depth to answer all the questions that you guys might have about how they work, what skill works or doesn't work with each other, what kind of pairings can you do with them, and is Tohar and Bertrand worth investing in at all? Should you skip them, or should you get at least one of them? Hey everyone, Zaraz here from Not Casuals. Of course, today we are going to go right into the meat of the matter, which is, are these two new Mage Heroes actually good, worth your time, worth your money and your tokens? Now, I personally believe that Bertrand is actually quite amazing, but Tohar is quite underwhelming. There's a few things to discuss, and I'm going to go over everything in this video. First is going to be Tohar. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before, but this is a hero that does not have a rage skill, first of all. So this is a passive skill. Now, if you look here, this is a rage skill. Any other hero in the game has a rage skill. Everything says rage, rage, rage. Now, this is not a rage skill. So not having a rage skill actually impacts this March quite heavily, because when you look at talents, for example, casting rage skills grant 20 additional rage, and this one makes it so the second rage skill from the deputy has more damage. Well, these don't seem to apply to Tohar. If you look at battle reports, Tohar kind of just starts channeling, but this never gets triggered. So this is one thing that is kind of underwhelming, because when you're mixing them together, basically this two branch of skill completely becomes useless on Tohar as secondary. Now, it's not the biggest thing in the world because this is already a pretty weak thing in general, but it just has a lot of impact on a lot of stuff. Another one here being when you have Foresight, casting rage skill has a chance to grant a lot of rage. Now, this is a pretty good rage generation talent that has half of its value removed because Tohar is in the March and doesn't have a rage skill. The same can be said about these two when casting rage skill, when casting rage skill. So much of this tree is based around casting rage skill, which is really kind of saddening because of the way Tohar is. So this is why that, in my opinion, when you're going to have a Tohar secondary to your Bertrand, the magic tree might be a little bit more attractive, because for example, this one, while it is still rage skill based, the Legion gains defense penetration, which means that Bertrand will most likely trigger it himself, give it the buff to the Legion, which, even though it probably won't work for Tohar's damage, it could. It's hard to know. It's really, these things are kind of hard to test, as of course the way the mechanic of Tohar is so weird. But really, here is where I could see it really being good. When your Legion is full magic, you deal 2% more hero skill damage every time you gain a buff effect. Tohar does make Bertrand gain a lot of buffs through his own marks, and Bertrand himself has so many things that buffs him, especially in the talents. You gain so many buffs in this game, especially on Bertrand when you look at the battle logs. So this would be kind of up all the time, meaning that you would gain a lot of damage. So this is one thing that is worth going testing. Obviously, we're going to have to wait for the heroes to be much higher level to test very well. But in my opinion, this is going to be one of the downsides. Having no rage skill on Tohar really, really dampens the March in the way that it doesn't buff a lot of the stuff that it's supposed to, and a lot of it just doesn't apply. The next thing that is actually quite bad about Tohar is that so much of his kit is built around this Earth Conduit channeling. You do 5 normal attacks, and then the next 5 seconds are spent channeling for a damage factor of 300. The one thing to remember is that a rage skill usually takes quite a bit to cast. In combat, you will cast your rage skill sometimes between 7 to 10 seconds. It depends on the rage regen and all that kind of stuff. But you know, the first rage skill happens here at 12 seconds. Then the next one happens at 22 seconds. And then the next one happens at 32 seconds. So it's kind of like every 10 seconds. At the current level, it will go lower during war, and it will go lower when you have a higher level where you have more stuff going on and more talents. But in any case, this is similar in the way that Tohar kind of does 5 seconds here of normal attacks, and then you'll see basically, I think around 6 seconds now, he triggers his Earth Conduit the last time, and right here he starts doing the damage. So at 7 seconds, he is already starting to do his channeling. He'll do it like basically 5 times here, all the way up to, I think, here. And then after this one, he will normal attack again 5 times. And then he will do his channel again quite fast. So in the span of a battle with 60 seconds, he will be doing his rage damage, whatever his non-rage skill damage, more often than a regular hero. So the damage is lower, but in the end, if you're never ever moving and just standing still fighting, you will do more of the damage skill over time, and this will add up to a decent amount of damage because the damage that Tohar does is not completely terrible. So in a long-term battle, he will end up doing a decent amount of damage, but all of this is completely negated by movement. So we'll show you an example here. If we fight this Darkling, you will see, so basically Tohar's thing will appear as 5 balls around him. So right there, it happens quite fast, and you see he casts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then he will start auto attacking again. So the thing here that is really important to look at is if you move even an inch, all the balls disappear instantly. As you saw, he only casted 2 of his balls there. So this is what really makes him quite a lot weaker than people realize, because in combat you're fighting at max range. If the enemy even moves a little bit backward, then your march is going to start chasing like this to catch up to them, and then instantly your rage skill is just gone. Even though I keep calling it a rage skill, it's not a rage skill, but you guys know what I mean. So this is where this can be kind of like, you know, less good, because all of the balls disappear. He casts, you know, 1 or 2 depending on the animation. And this is something that in combat, in PvP, when you're fighting, you know, let's say there's a big ball of players here and a big ball of players here, you're attacking each other at max range. As soon as people get targeted, usually the screen becomes red. Well, people will back off, which means your march will chase, right? Instantly, your rage skill gets cancelled. Now, you will still get a few shots off, but in battle, this will happen constantly. And then you have to do 5 more normal attack. It's not like he just picks up where he left off. So a lot of this can be wasted by any kind of movement. And for those of you who've done a lot of war, movement happens all the time. Especially these days, people are focusing more and more on movement speed and kiting and stuff like that. So this is really one aspect that really hurts Tohar. It's too easy to cancel this with movement. You get targeted, you move back, you cancel Tohar's stuff instantly. Now, to make it even worse, his Awaken here, Rage of the Plateau, gains 35% attack for 3 seconds after he finishes channeling. Now, this is only going to work if he does the full channel. We have looked at the multiple battle report that shows this very clearly from people who have maxed it. So here I have a battle report from Perch, who has maxed the entire hero. If you look here, he is Awakened. He has the Earth Ritual, so obviously he is completely maxed. And I can go in this report and show you, because this report was basically canceling the attack on purpose to see. So the perfect way to look at this is if I click here, you see the Legion attack 35%. So if you look here, basically Earth Ritual is being triggered here because he finished his channeling of Earth Conduit, and then he gains Keen, take effect next turn. Then if we look at the next turn, the 35% attack is here, it's here, and it's here because it lasts for 3 seconds, and then boom, it's gone. So this is what it looks like. Now, going to when we canceled it on purpose, you will see here, basically, he does 5 of his normal attacks, which Earth Conduit triggered. And then this is the 5th one, I believe. And then here, you see that there is Plateau Protection being triggered from his channeling starting, but there is no damage. He is currently not doing any damage, right? So because we moved the march while he was fighting. So you see here, Bertrand, there's no Tohar, because the movement canceled his attack completely, and there is no such thing as 35% damage that is appearing anywhere, because we simply just don't get the buff unless he fully channels. You can look here, there is no 35% attack anywhere. 35% attack is not there, it's not there, it's not there. You know, we canceled it on purpose a lot on this just for the testing, but really he's never getting this buff. So now you're spending hundreds and hundreds of tokens to get this, and the only way you're gonna get it to work is if you're fully channeling. So this, in my opinion, is obviously kind of bad, because this is, you know, one of the biggest buff of his kit. 35% attack is very impactful, especially because Tohar usually channels his full ability before Bertrand does his skill, which means that this is going to trigger Bertrand's 2nd skill, and currently in the game, this is the only thing that is able to fully trigger the max stacks of Golden Mark. It's only with Tohar. It still triggers, you know, you can get 1 stack or 2 if you're lucky, depending on the matchups you're using, Velen, Lilia, and things like that. But in any case, you're never going to get the full March skill here damage, basically up to 30% damage, and then you have an extra 15% damage here consumed when you cast. Well, only Tohar can give that because of this, and then he gives the 35% buff as well. So it's amazing together. They are meant to go together, but any movement will just completely negate this. This in the garbage if you move at all during those 5 seconds, and this obviously less damage. And then on top of that, this will channel only if he finishes his like 5 normal attacks. So this is the same thing. This only triggers if he fully channels, and this also only triggers if he fully starts channeling. Basically meaning that after his 5 normal attack, this will appear as a buff. But then if you move around, it will stop. So the buff will go away because this only works when he's channeling while channeling Rage of the Plateau. So if he's not channeling, this buff goes away, which obviously is a good buff because it reduces the counter-attack damage and gives a lot of defense. But if the enemy starts moving, it cancels. So you have 2 of his skill that gets cancelled by the movement, and then you have 1 that's a garrison skill that does absolutely nothing. So we'll end up with this, which is by far his best skill. 30% skill damage is huge. It's better than any other hero gives. It's amazing, right? It's a big percentage. For example, Velen has a 15% boost, so 30% is double that. So really, really good for sure. But it ends up being the only skill that works like consistently, right? Like most of the other skills don't work majority of the time if there's any movement. So this is really where it becomes an issue with Tohar. It's really where he becomes underwhelming. In battles, in war, you are moving a lot, you are chasing a lot. If you just get your 5 balls, then you like moving up a little bit to target another March. The March dies, you're targeting another March that's max range, you move even like a slight inch like this, cancelled. And then also in combat, you don't have time to look at your March to see, is he channeling, is it not channeling? There's 50 of you on top of each other, you don't know, you're moving, you're not moving. It is really, really an unpleasant way to play. So this is where I can see a lot of people being right when they're saying that Tohar is really not worth investing in. And I would agree for the majority of the case. The only reason that you really, really would invest in Tohar is because if you're going to have a very strong Bertrand, in order to get his, as I said, 15% damage here, his 30% damage here, Tohar is the only one that will really, really get his true full potential out. And that is the only way you can do it. Otherwise, of course, Bertrand is a flying hero who will go absolutely amazing with Theia. He'll also go amazing with Velen as secondary because Velen, everything Velen gives is amazing for mage. There's a lot of crit here, which is insane for a hero like Bertrand that does so much damage. Hero skill damage is 15%, a lot of movement speed, and Velen also does slows, also a lot of damage. So anyone with Bertrand is amazing. Even Lilia with Bertrand, we can put Lilia first as well. Being that if you put Lilia first, at least it will trigger, this a little bit because she will do skill damage. Now, these are all things to consider, but really when we're talking about Tohar, other than to make Bertrand really shine, there really is not a good excuse for him to exist. Garrisoning as a mage is absolutely terrible because Syndrion demolishes him. It doesn't matter how good garrisoning, there is just nothing to garrison anyways except Roots of War. So it's not an issue that nobody cares about because there is nothing to do with it in the game. But really, he still gets demolished by archers. Syndrion is still amazing. They're the counter, they gain bonus damage against mages. No matter how much this is decent and the tree can be good, you will not survive a rally. It's just not good to garrison with mages. You would rather have them in the field. It can be situational, but currently in the game, in the current meta, it's just not something you're gonna do. So this is a conflicting situation where, of course, you want to use him to make Bertrand shine, but if you do want to fly, you can't use him. So I'm disappointed in this decision because it kind of like is making people have questions and regret. Like, you want a really fun flying March, but you can't get the full potential without using a non-flying March. So obviously, it kind of makes it a little bit fairer maybe because you have to decide. You can't just be OP and flying at the same time. But, this is really my conclusion to Tohar. I'm really, really disappointed in all the fact that you cannot do anything without moving. And really, I can see that a lot of his value will be lost in battles where people are mobile. Now, while we are going to be bashing Tohar a little bit more, the last thing that I want to mention that is really, really kind of disappointing with Tohar is that Tohar delays Bertrand's skill. So that means that when I'm going to be fighting this, Tohar's 5 balls have to cast before Bertrand will cast his rage skill, even if his rage bar is completely full. So let's look exactly what it looks like. So we'll see the first 5 balls are going to appear, and then you'll see his rage skill is going to be full, and he's not going to cast it. He's not casting it, he's not casting it, and then he's casting it. So it doesn't seem like much, but adding an extra second or 2 of delay, which means he's not gaining rage for the next skill, is actually quite bad. Now, sometimes the skill will finish just before, and you'll see instantly Bertrand casts his skill, there's no issue, but it will happen more often than not, where I think it'll happen a little bit now. See, it is delayed. There is an extra second or 2 here where he would have cast the rage skill faster had Tohar had not had his balls. So obviously this is not good. You don't want to be delaying your rage skill because you're not regaining more rage. You're just wasting DPS. It's completely wasted. And 102 second is a pretty massive difference in my opinion. So this is something to look out for, especially as we gain higher and higher levels on Bertrand. You will get more rage regen. There's more skills to be gotten here and there, and he will be wasting all of that. All of these talents are going to be wasted if he's with Tohar. So all in all, it's not looking good for Tohar in my opinion. I am having him at 5111 for now because I am going to hold off. As many of you who have followed me already know, I have a ton of these ready for these heroes, and I am going to be keeping him at 5111 for now because I'm just so underwhelmed by him. I don't know if I'm going to actually use him. Just to give you guys a little bit of a foresee on what I'm going to be planning to run this season, here are the marches that I've prepared. This is like my full 5 marches with, you know, obviously tank and calves, as well as 2 mages, 1 archer. This is kind of a cookie cutter. In this case, I would be doing Lilia with Velin, and then these 2, because these 2 would be flying, so they would have a different angle of battle. If you're not interested in the flying, you can have Velin as secondary, and Theia goes very, very well with Lilia. So these are very easily interchangeable. I think the only real priority is having Velin as secondary and Theia as secondary because they don't have the skill tree. The skill tree is obviously so massive, especially when you have Velin as secondary, for example. And then obviously you can switch it around. You can have, you know, whatever you want in the secondary here. You can also do this. This is 3 mage march. So obviously for this, you will need Tohar. And then, you know, this is another one. Tohar could go with Lilia. It's not as good, but it's not bad. 30% damage is never going to be bad. And this march obviously is going to be the last one, which has, you know, him as first because Waldir has the skill tree, and then Velin works very well with him. It's just a really good combo with the awakening, the freeze. It's a lot of damage. This is close to as strong as this march in my experience. As a T4 player, I would gain very close merit with these 2 marches. So this is one way of doing it. Now, the question is, do you want to run 3 mage marches or do you want to run 2 mage marches? So this is kind of the options. As I said, you can change things around a little bit. As secondary, Velin will work so well with Bertrand. So this is something you can do, but this is my dilemma. I really wanting to run 3 mage marches because when I start running out of troops, I'm going to start looking at less marches and want to make them better. These 2 marches are going to be obviously better than these marches in my opinion, just because this is a huge AoE march. It's really the top march in the game right now for merit printing, and this is going to be flying. This is where I think people are going to find the true power of Bertrand, because while a march that is flying, this one, you know, it will be less damage than the Tohar march for sure, because you don't get all the same buffs. You still get a big shield, and this is going to matter a lot in my opinion, because when you have this skill maxed, you gain a lot of stats, a total of 30% stat, for not taking normal attack damage, right? So normal attack damage comes from being targeted, being attacked. In the case where you're flying and you have a shield, it will prevent some of it, but also you cannot do this, you cannot get attacked by normal attack damage unless you are being targeted. And I'm not sure if counterattack works or not in this case. It could, but the shield would really help negate this, as well as mages don't do counterattack, and neither does Cav, I think, most of the time. So this means that when you're attacking the mage's march of the enemy, well, you're not taking damage back. So this would obviously give a huge bonus there. As well, when you're flying, you know, you can go on top of mountains. You know, you go up here and you fight people that are down here on the ground. There's a lot of people in like chokes and stuff like that. It is really easy to attack people from up there and they can't attack you back. Mages and archers with the new talent will be able to attack you at max range, but you move an inch and then their march start walking around and being routed weirdly, then you come back. You can do so much poking. There is really so much power in being a flying march, which is why I personally am starting to think that I'm going to lean on this option, which is going to be having a flying Bertrand Theia and then having a super solid ground march. And then the rest will be, you know, other units like marksmen and stuff like that. Having two super strong march is obviously going to be very powerful, but this is obviously just my opinions, and obviously it's just because Tohar is really just not seeming so great right now that I'm thinking that I might just not do 3 march. I'm still going to do it a little bit with 5-1-1-1 because Tohar doesn't need to be maxed to give all his benefits to Bertrand, so it's not a big deal. It just is, you know, one of these situations where it's kind of hard to know exactly how it's going to go, but so far this is what I'm leaning in. A few other things that I want to talk about is going to be how you are going to get to trigger Bertrand's second skill, the stacks. There is this thirst for blood here from the confirmation from the customer service. They have said that this will work to trigger Bertrand's skill. So in this case, if you have a hero like Lilia in the first place, meaning that she's the main hero, and then Bertrand as deputy, well, Lilia will cast her skill. Scorch apparently doesn't work, so this wouldn't trigger the thing. But then with casting this skill, she will then do this extra 60 bonus damage, which means that he would then get 2 stacks. So out of 3, he would get 2. So not as good as Tohar, but still decent enough, as in he gets most of his bonus. So this is one thing to consider, as you can have Bertrand as secondary if you're even running just one Mage March, or if you want to run like Lilia Bertrand and like Villain with, you know, for example, Theia or Waldir. You know, there's a few possibilities in this game, of course. So this is one way that you can make it work. Now, he also has it himself, but the problem is that when he casts his rage kill and then he casts his 60 damage, this buff only lasts for 5 seconds. So unless he casts his next rage kill within 5 seconds, which is very unlikely, the fastest I've ever seen a rage kill cast is like 6 and 7 seconds. In the heat of war, when you're getting like even attacked, so you're getting range when you're getting normal attack and stuff like that. So I've seen it, but it's not 5 seconds. So in this case, it doesn't really work. So this is one of the frustrating thing. But just so that people know, you can make it trigger a few times by having the other hero kind of do it. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that, for example, if you have Bertrand as primary and Villain as secondary, who does his own skill damage, or even Lily as secondary, is that he will cast his rage skill first, then a second or two later, the deputy will cast their rage skill, which then will give him the buff, whether it's 1 or 2 times, and then that buff would be lasting 5 seconds, but because Bertrand already cast his rage kill a few seconds before the deputy, it is most likely possible that you will get at least 1 or 2 stacks of this for his next rage kill, when you have really, you know, a very fast rage cycle on him, when you've built it that way with the talents and all kind of stuff. So this is one of the possibilities, and this is one of the reasons why I think Tohar is not as needed on Bertrand as people think. It is still going to be optimal, but it's not a mandatory thing as much as people think, because you will get a lot of this kit already. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is we've seen a lot of people duel other content creators. So, for example, Guns, who's made a really good video showing a lot of fights between, for example, Bertrand Tohar versus Lilia Villain, which is the other top march in the game. And a lot of the results, as you'll see on the screen right now, they do show that Bertrand Tohar loses the majority of the time. But the reason that is, I would say these tests are completely bogus currently is this skill, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. This is meaning you do not take normal attack damage. If you're doing a one-on-one, you are taking normal attack damage. This is never going to happen in war. You are going to be targeted, you'll back off, you'll come back in. You are not going to be targeted by normal attacks for a consistent amount of times. I have done countless hours of war where I do get targeted here and there, but mostly the damage you take is from AoE from other mages, but this is not counting skill damage taken from AoE. It only counts normal attack damage, which means you have to be targeted by a march, or possibly you have to be counterattacked, which means you're attacking infantry or archers. But even then, I don't think a counterattack applies here because it is not a normal attack damage, it's a counterattack damage. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but in any case, the majority of the time, if you're attacking especially mages, which is one of the highest threats, you should be attacking mages in the field because they do more damage than anyone else, you will not be getting normal attack, which means you will have this buff at an uptime that is going to be way higher than in a 1v1 duel. So when you're doing 1v1 duels, it really doesn't tell you much about this kit because this is 30% stats extra, which is huge. This is very, very high value in its attack and defense. So having 1v1s is kind of pointless and doesn't really tell us the true story at all. The other thing here is that, as you can see, his skill damage factor is 1300. If you awaken it, it becomes 1500. Now, the scaling of this is way higher than, for example, Lilia, who has a 1200. Villain has the same thing. The reason I'm saying this is like when you have a full march of 300,000 troops and you have all the buffs that are adding up, for example, this 5% consume per stack, you have these, 20-30% damage. You have, like, for example, the 30% damage from Tohar. You have crit if you have Villain or if you have the skill tree. You will scale higher because the base number that is being multiplied by all the bonuses is higher. Everything else will get higher. So at late game with everything maxed out, full marches, everything, this scaling will be much better because it starts off at 1500 instead of 1200. So I do think that Bertrand on the field will be an absolute monster and he will chunk people for a huge amount of damage. My Bertrand is 5111 at level 28 and his skill already hits Darkling for almost 10,000 and I'm T4. So this is all the things to keep in mind, and the fact that he can do this while flying, as I said, not going to get as much buff because Theia doesn't have any skill damage, but she does have skill damage bonuses, and she does provide this, which is going to be up all the time. If you have a pet with the shield ability on top of her shield, this is going to be a 30% attack bonus that is going to be up almost all the time. And then there's another 10% attack bonus, there's 20% defense bonus, and there is 20% march speed bonus, and another 15% attack bonus. So 15, 10, 30, 55% attack bonus on top of less damage taken, on top of a shield, on top of 15% hero skill damage. I do think it is going to be an absolute monster of Flying March. Lastly, I want to conclude just by saying, if you are going to be using a Bertrand Tohar March, this pet is obviously going to be one of the best ones, decent ones, but this pet is also going to be very decent. The one downfall is that you can't get access to this because you don't have Scorch, Freeze, or Ensnare unless you put someone like Velen as secondary, for example. So it really up to you. You cannot go wrong with either of these pets. They're both going to be decent. I think the Sapphire is better in general, but if you're going for more single target damage with Tohar, this is going to be, the pet that gives you more boost here. You can get this up to like 6-7% eventually with more stars and more levels. And then this adds up to all of the other damage that he gets. And because he already gets so much skill damage bonuses from his kit and from Tohar, there is really, the more you get, it does become pretty damn strong because of how much it scales. Again, from his base damage being higher at 1500. So these are the two choices. As I said, you can't really go wrong, but this is going to be obviously the pet that's more designed for that specific march, which is Bertrand and Tohar. As far as artifacts go, of course, this Phoenix Eye is always good. A lot of AoE. Mine is level 5, so it's even better. This Terrifying Inferno is only really good when Lilia is there. It's always good. It's a really good artifact, but the additional effect, which gives this buff, which is massive buff, only works when you apply Scorch. So if Lilia's not in the march, you're wasting this. So if you're using Lilia somewhere, she should be having this in her march. But of course, the artifact that's really made for this march is going to be the Mirage Orb, which is going to be amazing because it stuns and does very decent damage, as well as AoE, which he doesn't have any of. So this is really, it's made for them, but it's also going to be good on everybody else because, this is not unique to them. But as I said, Bertrand gains a ton of buffs through his kit, through his talents. So this is always up. It's always up. You always get the maximum damage. So if you have this, this is really made for him. I mean, it's really just lore-wise even made for him. So this is really his artifact. Of course, everything else is still fine. This great on him, and this great on him. There's nothing here that it provides that is not good for him. So these are the choices you have. It's really easy to build them around. You can really put anyone with anyone. Tohar is really the only one that's kind of locked with being with Bertrand, but everything else otherwise kind of mixes well together. If you want a Flying March, Theia is definitely better than Atheus. Atheus is a decent choice, but it's just not as good. The damage here is 800. This is decent, but it's not like the end of the world either. This is decent as well. You get a bit of more healing. It's not really useful because they don't have really healing. HP bonus is 10%. March speed bonus 20%. Damage taken reduction. We said Theia gained 55% attack bonus. She gives skill damage bonus. She gives so much more than Atheus. It's not even close. Atheus is not bad, You know, this does kind of work with his other skill. Obviously, there's healing there, but like the thing really is that the values on a purple hero are just so much lower than on a legendary hero. I would just not recommend it. It's optionally good, but it's just better with Theia. So that's about it, guys. Sorry for all the ranting. Of course, this is a ongoing testing. There will be more testing done when we get them to level 50. For now, my recommendation would be that people who are going to be running 2 mage marches, if you have Lily, Velen, and Theia at decent spots, they don't need to be max, but as long as they're decent enough, if you're gonna have these 3 plus Bertrand, that makes you 4 really good mage heroes that you can mix and match. That makes you 2 excellent mage marches for the open field, and that is what I would go for. If you really want to run 3 mage marches, then Tohar will be needed as secondary to Bertrand. So this is up to you. Like, it really depends on what you are going to be interested in, what you want to run. But personally, I would say for most players, I would recommend this setup. Change the secondaries around if you like, which is perfectly viable. But 3 mage marches, obviously you're going to run out of mages eventually, so you're going to have to go back to 2 marches and eventually 1 if you don't have any mages and everything's in the hospital. But in my opinion, it's really just not worth spending hundreds and hundreds. It's 690 token to awaken Tohar, and it's just not worth it for me if you're not a big spender that has a lot of really good marches already. I would rather do a Bertrand max out with a Theia and have Lilia Velen and have 2 exceptionally good marches and only really spending, you know, what I have here on him and then save the rest for another day or another hero or even like Syndrome and stuff like that if you want. It's just, the investment here is just not that worth it. And if you're not going to max him out, if you're going to keep him at 5111, as I said, he will do well enough to make the kit of Bertrand work to the max potential, but you also kind of want this maxed out because this is so good. And then you also kind of want this because this is such a big part of the kit, even though it's interruptible so easily. If you're not getting the Awaken, you're kind of losing a lot of value of the hero because, as I said, it's so massive. So it really is an all or nothing kind of hero. If you're not going to go all in for him and get this maxed out and then get this, you're really losing a lot of the value of this hero, as opposed to, for example, Bertrand, who is obviously going to be best with everything Awakened, but his kit, you know, the damage difference is not huge between the Awakened. You are able to play him very viably without the Awakened. This is great, but you don't need it to be maxed either. The bonuses just give you more and more buff. But the kit itself, you know, it still works. Obviously, you would like him to be maxed. He's going to be very good at max, but you can use him and his kit will still work without being Awakened. Where him, you kind of need this to be good because that's one of the best buffs he gives. And then so many points are going to be wasted into this. And then, as I said, this is kind of really needed for him to shine. So this is really an optional thing for you guys. You decide. I can't tell you you should or shouldn't do it. And people who do invest in Tohar will see good results. It's just decide if this is really worth your investment for the clunkiness and the kind of like underwhelmingness of Tohar, especially when you have the option of not using Tohar and you still get very strong marches. This march is still absolutely amazing. It's flying. There's just nothing bad about this march. People are going to be terrorizing the battlefield with T5 Celestials in this march. I can guarantee you it is going to slap really hard and counter a lot of immobile ground marches. Cavs, infantry is going to get eaten up by these marches, and if you have a group of players like 20 people flying around with these marches, they can nuke down a march so incredibly quick. One rage kill, the march is dead if there's like 4 or 5 players, and one at a time, boom, all the marches, you can do that. You can spread out so you don't take AoE damage because you're on top of mountains. The people at the bottom who are not flying are going to be having issues going to you. Archers without the new talent can't do anything to you at all except counterattack. So really, in my opinion, this is amazing, and this is what I'm probably going to go for. I'm not going to invest in Tohar anytime soon. So this is really what I would recommend for most people who are interested in these mages but can't max both of them. Just go for this setup and ignore Tohar for now. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Of course, I am not the arbiter of truth. I don't have all the information. This is my opinion based on a lot of testing, based on looking at other people's testing and looking at Perch maxed, you know, Tohar's report and all that kind of stuff, which definitely helped a lot. So thanks to these guys, of course. I recommend you go check out Gun's video as well if you want to see it in action, you know, really fighting. But as I said, 1v1s are really not something you should look at because of how much of Bertrand's kit is wasted in a 1v1, which is not the way this game works. There is no 1v1 in this game. You don't 1v1 in this game ever in war, so it's just not something that happens. So just, you know, make sure to check it out, make your own opinion. But this is so far what I would recommend, and these are the things that I would say. So if you have any other things to share, make sure to put in the comments. I'm happy to chat, go back and forth, and keep testing. As well as I'm going to be releasing a full guide, character guide on Bertrand in the coming days, and show you exactly how great he is with a flying march. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.